Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase pricing and availability questions concerning this watch. How rare is this Omega de Ville Central Tourbillon numbered edition? So rare that in my life, I've only seen one, and I've reviewed 4 Philippe Dufours. Take a look at the back of this watch, number 27, but I need a 1916 branded review, so we're going to re-up, renew our nuptials, and review this watch once again. And I am married to the idea of the Omega Tourbillon because as a watch enthusiast coming up through high school in the late 1990s, pretty much the most exotic watch I could ever see at Tourneau in the mall was an Omega Central Tourbillon. In a world where a Seamaster was aspirational, this seemed like the moon and the stars. Now, of course, this is a more recent version of the watch, as this model specifically debuted back in 2015. So it's bigger than the 90s version at 44 millimeters in diameter in Sedna red gold, 15.1 millimeters thick, and it's 49.2 millimeters from lug tip to lug tip with a 22 millimeter spacing between the lugs. Now, the watch does wear well because in spite of its size, it is under 50 millimeters lug to lug. And you have to remember, this is an automatic winding watch, so it's not even excessively thick. Does it fit? You better believe it fits. Now, would I wear it on a wrist much smaller than mine? No. My impression wearing it now is that a 16 centimeter circumference wrist is fine. It's going to look good. It's going to feel good. But if your wrist is any smaller, take a look at those lugs. They're close to the edge. They're not over, but a smaller wrist is going to look a bit overpowered by this watch, especially since it is Sedna red gold. Now, this is an alloy of 18 karat red gold, very similar to what Panerai calls Oro Rosso, Hublot calls King Gold, and Rolex calls Ever Rose. It has a lot of copper, which makes it very red, and it has a lot of palladium and platinum family metals, so it doesn't oxidize, tarnish, or fade to a lighter shade of red over time. There is a difference between pink, rose, and red gold. This is red gold. The watch will fit under a cuff, largely because its case flank is so sloped, so no issues there. I'll show you the cuff shot one more time, just in case you missed, but this will fit underneath the sleeve. I think you'll be surprised by how well it'll fit underneath the shirt. Taking a look at the strap, it's very deluxe, so Omega doesn't hold back here. We get a matte finished blue, large rectangular symmetrical scale alligator leather. You know, when the scales are large, rectangular, and symmetrical, you're looking at an expensive cut of the beast. There's a lot of bolstering here to give it some volume. We've got a folded edge, a monotone stitch, and then a little bit of a curved spring bar so that the strap isn't constrained against the case, and it can move pretty freely, pull straight down out of the lugs. The strap is, of course, calfskin on the bottom, and you can see that it features the well-known Omega clasp, albeit in Sedna red gold. This clasp design has been around since, well, basically I was graduating high school. Twin trigger release. It's got a clasping system internally that fits all of the excess length both under the clasp body and under the opposite side of the strap. As a result, there's no need for a strap minder, and this is what a strap minder is. This doesn't need those. Those tend to fall off long before the strap is truly ready to be thrown in the bin, so being able to operate without strap minders extends the life of the strap in practice. We have this lovely fluid compound curved case. Everything here is a soft line, with the notable exception of the edge of the conical bezel. That's where the watch finds all of its visual power. We have a high polish treatment that definitely glows. This watch is nothing if not wrist glitter. You can see the Omega logo on the crown. And then we've got a slightly boxed and cambered sapphire profile. A note about the crown. There are 2 crowns. This is the traditional automatic winding Central Tourbillon, which means, just like Maurice Grimm's original, the case back crown is used for setting, and the crown over at 3 o'clock is used for winding. And here's an important note about the winding. It's always in a counterclockwise direction. So taking a look at the dial, you can see it is a spectacular PVD blue metallic sunburst. Now, the way this works is the Central Tourbillon is a flying tourbillon, which means there's no upper bridge to block your view. And you can see there is no upper bridge. It's self-contained, so it only pivots at the bottom. As a result, you can really enjoy what you're seeing. And what you're seeing is the tri-level coaxial escapement. This is probably the Omega watch that gives you the best pure view of the signature mechanism of all coaxes ever made under this logo. This is so obvious that I can see both of the impulsing surfaces, the inboard and the outward, plus the drive that exists on top. So when I say tri-level coaxial, I mean there's an inboard impulsing surface that impulses the balance. There's an outboard with longer impulsing surfaces. And then there's actually a gear above it that is used to drive it. The earliest versions of the coaxial forced the inward impulsing surfaces to double as the last gear in the drivetrain, which created reliability problems. By going to the triaxial, where the drivetrain has its own little pinion to drive, and then you have the impulsing surfaces solely impulsing the balance, you get a much more reliable version of the coax. So this is a coaxial, as envisioned by George Daniels, a direct and indirect impulse escapement whose key feature is it uses tangential rather than sliding friction. Tangential is less. Sliding is what you get on a standard Swiss lever. Now, the tourbillon cage here is extravagantly hand-finished. It's made of titanium for low weight. It features an overcoil hairspring, so not only does it feature the coax, but the overcoil's centered mass means in roughly every position, the watch is going to keep pretty much consistent and even time. It is a COSC certified Swiss chronometer. Now, the way this works is that you turn counterclockwise to wind, and then you pop out this little case back crown, which I'm going to do now, and this is used to set. So you can see how this works. There are driving pinions. These are actually sapphire discs that are superimposed. And there are little driving pinions that turn a ring gear that move these. And so you have this large hour and minute track because underneath this is a mechanical mechanism that drives the hands. So you have these almost magical floating hands. And it's a wonderful piece of horological theater. Now, the speed sway at 28,800 vibrations per hour. It is automatic winding, though you can't see the rotor. It's inside the case back. The rotor has a platinum mass for optimized winding efficiency. That's really the gold standard, which ironically is platinum for winding masses, the densest material possible for the greatest polar moment or turning force. Also important to know is that this caliber 2638 features the initial of the watchmaker who built it on the base plate, though you can't see that. You can see Kronos, the time god, on the back, and again, number 27. I've seen it twice. This is a numbered edition, and they're so rare that the only one I've ever encountered is number 27. So while it might not be limited edition, it is very much limited production. Also important to note is that the power reserve here is 45 hours, so basically set it and forget it, except for daylight savings time. And it is an outstanding timekeeper. These were all designed to be regulated far beyond the bare minimum COSC standard. 30 meters water resistant, which is actually kind of impressive given how it's assembled, and it would have been built in the tourbillon shop where luminaries like Cyrano de Vente and many others have started their careers in autologerie. These are made by hand. One watchmaker, one watch. When you're buying an Omega tourbillon, you're buying something that is every inch the equal of a Journe or a de Bethune or a Grunefeld. Those are all chic independents, but Omega, of course, is a monster. You know that no matter what happens to independent brands, Omega and Rolex, Patek Philippe, these are brands that are forever able to service and renew your central tourbillon. That is the kind of safety blanket that could persuade me to be a future owner of this well-traveled number 27. If I ever see it again, never say never. Reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.